The old building stood at the edge of the city, its walls cracked and its doors rusted. Inside, it was a shelter for those no one wanted, abandoned alien children from different species. The air smelled of dust and sadness. Rows of small metal beds lined the hall, each with a thin blanket and a frightened face peeking from it. Some children whispered in strange alien tongues, some stared blankly, and some cried quietly into their pillows. It was not a place of laughter or joy, but of forgotten souls. That morning, a human man named Daniel walked through the shelter's door. He had come with food and supplies, nothing more. He had heard about the shelter and felt pity for the little ones who had no one. His boots echoed on the floor as he entered, and the caretaker, a tired alien woman with 4 arms and tired eyes, nodded at him. "Leave the boxes there," she said in a flat tone. Daniel placed the food crates near the wall and turned to leave, but something caught his eyes. A corner darker than the rest. A shadow that seemed heavier than others. There, almost hidden behind a broken chair, sat a small alien girl. She was thin, her skin pale gray with faint blue veins glowing underneath. Her eyes were large, too large for her small face, and they looked hollow, as if hope had drained out long ago. Unlike the other children, she did not move when Daniel entered. She did not even blink. She simply stared at the floor, silent and empty. The sight made his chest tighten. She looked like sadness itself, given a body. Daniel asked the caretaker, "Why is she sitting alone?" The alien woman glanced quickly and shrugged. "That one? Nobody wants her. Too quiet, too strange. Families choose the healthier ones, the cheerful ones. She has been here longer than most." Her voice carried no care, as if the girl was just another piece of broken furniture. "We call her Lyra," she added, "but she does not answer to it." Daniel crouched slightly, trying to see the girl's face better. "Hey there," he said softly. No response. Only those big empty eyes flicking up to his for a moment before falling back down. He tried again, a smile on his face, but her lips never moved. Other children peeked at him with curiosity, but she sat still as stone. Something about her silence was heavier than all the cries in the room. A strange feeling rose inside Daniel. He had only come to give food, yet now his feet would not move toward the door. His eyes kept returning to her, as if invisible strings held him there. He whispered to the caretaker, "She looks sadder than the others." The caretaker laughed bitterly. "Sad? She is more than sad. She is broken. Do not waste time on her. No one will adopt her. Not human, not alien. It is better if you do not look too long." The words were harsh, but Daniel could not tear his gaze away. Broken or not, she was still a child. He slowly walked closer. The girl's thin fingers tightened around the edge of her ragged dress, pulling it as if it could protect her. Her shoulders trembled, but still she did not speak. Daniel bent down until his eyes were level with hers. "You remind me of someone," he whispered, though he was not sure who. Maybe it was his own younger self, left alone after war had taken his family. Maybe it was the memory of sadness he once carried. Whatever it was, it pushed him forward. He asked the caretaker, "What if I want to take her?" The woman's eyes widened. "Take her? That one? You are human. Why choose her when there are others, healthier, prettier?" Her voice was filled with disbelief, almost anger. Daniel stood tall, his jaw firm. "Because no one else will," he replied simply. His words cut through the dusty air, leaving a silence behind. Whispers began among the other caretakers. A human adopting that girl? Impossible. Unthinkable. Yet Daniel filled out the forms without hesitation. His hands did not shake. His voice did not waver. The caretaker tried again to change his mind. "She does not eat properly. She does not sleep. She sits all night staring at the wall. You will regret this." But Daniel only signed his name harder, pressing the pen as if carving his choice into the paper itself. "I will not regret giving someone a home," he said. Finally, the moment came. The caretaker brought the girl forward, holding her by the arm as if she were weightless. "She is yours now," the woman said, almost spitting the words. The girl did not resist, but her eyes showed confusion. She had never been chosen before. She had never been wanted. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came. She stared at Daniel as if trying to understand why. Daniel knelt again, gently placing his coat over her shoulders. It was too big for her small frame, but it wrapped her in warmth. "You're coming with me," he said softly. For the first time, her eyes blinked fast, a flicker of life inside them. She did not smile, but her grip on his coat tightened as if afraid it might vanish. They walked out together. Behind them, the whispers grew louder. The human is mad. Why her of all? He will regret it. But Daniel did not look back. The rain had started outside, and he lifted the girl into his arms to keep her from the puddles. She was lighter than he expected, almost like holding air. He felt her heartbeat against his chest, fast, nervous, but alive. As they left the shelter, the old door creaked shut behind them. For the girl, it was the first time stepping out with someone who had chosen her. For Daniel, it was the first time in years he felt his empty home might finally be filled. He looked down at her fragile form and whispered a promise only she could hear. You will never be alone again. She did not reply, but her small hand clutched his sleeve tightly, and that was enough. Would you like me to also expand part 2, the first night home, into 900 words in the same simple, suspenseful style? The house was quiet when Daniel carried the alien girl inside. His home was simple, with old wooden floors and walls covered in family pictures long faded with time. He placed her carefully on a chair near the small fire that burned in the fireplace. The flames gave a soft light, but she did not move closer. She only sat still, her large eyes staring at the glowing wood as if the fire itself was strange to her. Daniel thought she might be hungry, so he went to the kitchen and brought a bowl of soup. He placed it in front of her, the steam rising gently. Eat, he said softly, trying to sound calm. But she did not touch it. Her thin hands rested on her lap, fingers twisting the fabric of his coat that still covered her shoulders. The soup grew colder with each passing minute, yet she never reached for it. Daniel sighed and sat across from her. He remembered how the caretaker had said she would not eat, how she would only sit in silence. He wondered if they had been right. Hours passed and night settled outside. The wind blew against the windows, rattling them. Daniel showed her a small room he had prepared, a bed with a blanket, a lamp by the side, and a window that opened to the dark sky. This is your room now, he told her. She stepped inside slowly, her bare feet hardly making a sound on the floor. She looked at the bed, but did not lie on it. Instead, she walked to the window and stood there, staring out at the shadows. Daniel leaned against the doorframe, watching her. It's safe here, he said. No one will hurt you. But she did not answer. She only pressed her forehead against the cold glass. He left the lamp on for her and closed the door gently, giving her space. That night, as he lay in his own bed, he could not sleep. He kept listening for sounds from her room. At first, it was only silence, heavy and still, but then strange noises began. A faint scratching, as if small claws dragged across wood. Then whispers, low and broken, in a language he did not understand. Daniel sat up, his heart beating faster. He thought maybe she was talking in her sleep, but the whispers sounded too deliberate, like someone else was in the room with her. He walked quietly to her door and pressed his ear against it. The sound was clearer now, like two voices speaking, but one of them was her own. The other was darker, deeper, something that did not sound like a child at all. He reached for the doorknob, but froze when he saw a faint glow seeping through the crack under the door. Blue light flickered across the floorboards, moving like waves. Slowly, he pushed the door open. The lamp still burned, but the glow came from her. She stood by the window, her small body trembling, her veins glowing faintly under her gray skin. Her lips moved, whispering words too fast to catch. Her eyes were open wide, and for a moment Daniel thought she was looking at something outside in the darkness. When she noticed him, the glow faded quickly, and she stumbled back, almost falling. Daniel rushed to her side and caught her before she hit the floor. Her body was cold, colder than it should have been, and her breathing shallow. "What's happening to you?" he asked, fear in his voice. She shook her head violently, pressing her hands over her ears as if blocking out a sound only she could hear. Finally, in a trembling voice, she whispered, "Don't let them find me." The words chilled Daniel more than the glow had. He looked around the room, half expecting someone or something to appear from the shadows. But there was nothing, only the howling wind outside. He carried her to the bed and laid her down gently. She closed her eyes, still shaking, her small hands clutching the blanket like it was her only shield. Daniel sat beside her until her breathing slowed. He could not understand what she meant or who she feared, but he knew she was telling the truth. Something, or someone, was after her. He stroked her hair lightly, and though she did not open her eyes, she whispered again, "Don't let them find me." This time her voice was weaker, almost like a plea. When at last she drifted into a restless sleep, Daniel stayed in the room, sitting on the chair near the bed. He watched her tiny form curl under the blanket, her face pale and troubled even in dreams. He had thought bringing her home would bring her peace, but now he realized her sadness carried shadows far darker than he imagined. Outside, the moon shone through the window, casting a silver glow over her face. Daniel looked at her and made a silent promise. Whatever hunted her, whatever haunted her nights, he would not let it take her away. Even if she never trusted him fully, even if she never spoke again, he would stand between her and the darkness. As the hours passed, he heard more strange whispers in the night, but softer now, as if fading with her sleep. He stayed awake until morning, his eyes never leaving her. The house felt different, as if it no longer belonged to him alone. The presence of the alien girl filled every shadow, every silence. She was fragile, broken, and strange, yet Daniel felt more alive protecting her than he had in years. By dawn, when the first rays of light touched the window, the girl stirred and opened her eyes briefly. For the first time, she looked at him not with emptiness, but with something else, fear mixed with trust. She whispered one last time before drifting back to sleep, "Don't let them take me." Daniel nodded quietly, though she could not hear. He would not let anyone take her, no matter what it cost. Do you want me to now expand Part 3, Secrets Begin to Show, into 900 words in the same suspenseful, simple English style? The next morning was heavy with silence. Daniel prepared breakfast, simple bread and tea, and placed a plate near the girl. She sat on the chair, her small hands folded on her lap. She did not touch the bread at first, only stared at it as if unsure what to do. Daniel spoke gently, "You can eat. It's safe." Finally, after a long pause, she lifted the bread and took the smallest bite. He noticed her eyes flick toward him, almost checking if he would be angry. He gave her a smile instead, and slowly, very slowly, she ate a little more. It was the first sign of trust, fragile as a thread. Daniel did not rush her. He spoke about ordinary things, the weather outside, the birds in the trees, the sound of the river near his house. She did not answer, but he thought he saw her listening. He told her, "You don't have to be afraid here." That was when she looked directly at him for the first time, her large eyes filled with something he could not name. Later, when he went to fix the roof, he found her standing near the doorway, watching him. She said nothing, but her presence was different. She was no longer hiding in shadows. She followed him quietly, always a few steps behind, like a small ghost clinging to his shadow. Daniel pretended not to notice, letting her feel that she was free to move. As days passed, she began to whisper small words. At first, they were single sounds, broken syllables that made little sense. Daniel did not push her, but every time she spoke, he encouraged her with a soft nod. One evening, while the fire crackled, she finally formed a full sentence. Her voice was thin, trembling like glass about to break. "I was not abandoned." Daniel froze. He looked at her carefully. "What do you mean?" She held the blanket tightly around her shoulders, her eyes fixed on the flames. "I ran away." Her words were shaky, but clear. He felt a chill crawl up his spine. The shelter had told him she was unwanted, left behind like the others. But now she was saying she had escaped. He leaned closer. "From where did you run?" She hesitated, her lips pressing together. Then, in the faintest whisper, she said, "From them." Daniel's heart pounded. "Who are they?" he asked. The girl shook her head, refusing to say more. Her small body trembled as if even speaking those words might bring danger. He realized pressing her too hard would only break her again, so he simply said, "You don't have to tell me now. But you're safe here." That night, when she thought he had gone to bed, Daniel saw her again at the window. The moonlight fell across her thin face, and her skin glowed faintly with blue lines, like rivers of light beneath the surface. He had never seen anything like it. She touched her arm nervously, where one of the glowing lines shone the brightest. Daniel stepped forward slowly, not wanting to scare her. "What is that?" he asked gently. She gasped and pulled the sleeve down, covering it quickly. "I didn't want you to see," she whispered. "They will come if they know." Her eyes filled with tears, the first tears he had seen from her. "They want my blood. It is not like others. They call it rare." Her words fell like stones in his chest. Rare blood, hunted for, powerful enough that she believed she could not be safe anywhere. Daniel knelt beside her, trying to calm her. Listen to me. You are not a thing for anyone to take. You are a child, and no one will hurt you as long as I'm here. But she shook her head, her small hands gripping his arm tightly. You don't understand. They don't stop. They don't forgive. If they find me, they will take me again. He held her hands in his, steady and warm. Then I won't let them find you. His voice was firm, stronger than he felt inside. She searched his eyes for a long moment, as if testing if his promise was real. Then she lowered her head and whispered, I believe you, but I am scared. Daniel felt his heart ache. She was carrying more fear than any child should. He gently brushed her tangled hair back. It's all right to be scared, but you're not alone anymore. From that night forward, something between them changed. She no longer hid from him. She began sitting closer, sometimes even resting near the fire while he worked. He noticed how she glanced at the door whenever the wind knocked against it, her body stiff with fear. She trusted him, but the fear of being hunted never left her. One afternoon, while Daniel was fixing a broken chair, she touched the edge of the wood with her thin fingers. The chair lifted off the ground, slowly, without her hands moving. It floated a few inches in the air before falling again with a loud thud. She gasped and pulled back, covering her mouth with both hands. I didn't mean to, she cried softly. Daniel stared in shock. He had heard stories of alien powers, but never had he seen one so close. She backed away, her glowing veins faintly visible again. This is why they want me, she whispered. Not just my blood, but this. They say it is dangerous. Daniel rose and knelt before her. It is not dangerous. It is part of you, and I don't care if the whole galaxy wants it. To me, you're just a child who needs someone to protect her. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, a spark of something like hope appeared there. She whispered, Papa? The word was so small he almost thought he imagined it. But she repeated it, stronger this time. Papa. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He had lost his own family long ago, and now in this strange, fragile child, someone was calling him that again. He placed his hand on her shoulder and nodded. Yes, I'll be your papa, and I'll never let them take you. That night, as she slept more peacefully than before, Daniel sat near her bed, his mind racing. He knew now that keeping her safe would not be simple. Whoever wanted her blood and her power would not give up. But he also knew something stronger. He would not give her up either. Whatever secrets she carried, whatever danger followed her, she was his daughter now, and no one would take her away. Do you want me to continue and expand Part 4, The Strange Powers, into 900 words the same way? The days grew quieter, but the silence was not the same as before. The girl no longer hid in corners. She followed Daniel around the house, sometimes sitting nearby while he worked, sometimes simply watching him with those large eyes that were beginning to look less empty. She still spoke little, but her presence was no longer like a shadow. It was becoming warmer, like a soft flame that had just begun to burn. One morning, Daniel decided to repair the fence behind the house. The wood had grown weak with rain, and animals from the forest often pushed through the gaps. He carried heavy planks out into the yard, his arms straining as he dropped them on the ground. The girl stood near the doorway, watching him. She always watched quietly, as if every small action of his was a mystery worth studying. Daniel smiled at her. You can come closer if you want. It's safe. She took a hesitant step, her bare feet brushing the grass, then another, until she stood a few meters away. He continued working, hammering nails into the wood. The sound echoed sharply, and she flinched at first, but then she grew still, curious. When Daniel lifted a particularly heavy piece of timber, he grunted with effort. The wood slipped from his grip and crashed to the ground with a loud thud. He muttered under his breath, bending to lift it again. But before he could touch it, the plank rose off the ground. Slowly, steadily, it floated in the air, carried by no hands at all. Daniel froze. His eyes widened, his breath catching in his throat. The girl stood a few steps away, her small hand trembling slightly, her wide eyes glowing faintly. The timber hovered between them, then drifted carefully to the fence and settled upright against it, as if placed there by invisible arms. The glow in her eyes faded, and the plank dropped the last few inches with a soft thump. She gasped, clutching her hands to her chest. I didn't mean. Her voice shook, breaking apart. I didn't mean to show you. She stepped back quickly, fear filling her face. Her small body trembled as if she expected him to shout, to be angry, to turn away. Daniel's shock lasted only a moment. He stepped closer, slowly, carefully, like approaching a frightened bird. That was you, he said softly. She nodded quickly, tears filling her eyes. Please don't tell. Please. They will come if they know. They will take me. Her words tumbled out, rushed and desperate. Daniel crouched in front of her, his voice steady. It's all right. I'm not angry. I'm not afraid of you. But she shook her head, her tears falling fast now. Everyone is afraid. At the shelter, they saw. Once. That's why no one wanted me. They said I was cursed. They said I was dangerous. Her small hands clenched tightly around his coat sleeve, as if she wanted to anchor herself. He looked into her eyes, the glow still faint within them, and shook his head. You are not cursed. You are special. And there is nothing dangerous about you, unless people choose to make it so. She stared at him, disbelieving, as if his words were impossible. Then she whispered, You're not afraid? He answered firmly, No, I promise to protect you, and I will. Nothing changes that. She sobbed once softly and pressed her face against his chest. Daniel felt her shoulders shake, her small frame trembling like a fragile leaf in the wind. He held her gently, one hand resting on her back. The sound of birds filled the air around them, but for a long while neither of them moved. That night, however, Daniel noticed the change outside. The neighbors' lights seemed brighter, and he felt the weight of unseen eyes on his house. When he went into town earlier that day, he had caught whispers, people saying the human man had taken the strangest child, the cursed one, the broken one. Now, after what he had seen, he realized the whispers might grow sharper, more dangerous. Inside, the girl sat near the fire, hugging her knees. She stared into the flames as if they hid secrets only she could read. Daniel sat beside her. Did you know you could move things before? He asked gently. She nodded without looking at him. I always knew, but I tried to hide. Sometimes it just comes out. I don't want it, but it happens. Her voice dropped lower. That is why they wanted me. Not only my blood, but this. They said it made me valuable. They said I belonged to them. Daniel clenched his fists. He hated the thought of her being treated like property, like a tool. You don't belong to anyone, he said firmly. You belong only to yourself. She lifted her head slowly, searching his face as if testing whether he truly believed it. Then she asked softly, And to you? He smiled faintly, a sad but warm smile. Yes, to me. Because you chose me when you called me Papa. Her lips trembled, and though no smile came, her eyes softened. She leaned against him, resting her head on his arm. For the first time, her breathing was steady, no longer filled with fear. Later that night, as Daniel checked the locks on the doors and windows, he caught sight of faint lights moving outside in the distance. They were not lanterns, not stars, but hovering shapes that glowed with an unnatural brightness. He stood very still, watching them drift slowly, scanning. His chest grew heavy with unease. He knew at once they were being watched. When he returned to the girl's room, she was already awake, sitting upright in bed, her eyes wide. She whispered, They're here. Daniel sat beside her, forcing calm into his voice. Don't be afraid. I'll keep you safe. She nodded, though her small hands shook as they gripped his tightly. As the lights outside hovered longer, Daniel understood that hiding her would not be easy anymore. She was more than just a sad child from the shelter. She was something rare, something powerful, something that others would do anything to take. But to him, she was only his daughter now. And he would fight the whole galaxy if he had to. Would you like me to now expand Part 5, They Come for Her, into 900 words in the same suspenseful and simple English style? The next morning, Daniel felt uneasy. The strange lights from the night before stayed in his mind. He tried to act normal, cooking breakfast, but his eyes kept drifting toward the windows. The girl, Lyra, sat quietly at the table. She chewed the bread slowly, her eyes lowered, but Daniel noticed her small hands were trembling. She felt it too, the weight of danger pressing on their home. A knock came at the door, sharp, heavy. Daniel froze. Lyra's eyes widened in fear, and she slid off her chair, hiding behind him. Another knock followed, louder this time. He walked slowly to the door and opened it just enough to see. 3 figures stood outside. They wore long, dark coats, their faces hidden under metallic masks that reflected the morning sun. The tallest one spoke, his voice muffled but firm. We are looking for a child, an alien girl. She escaped from a facility not far from here. Have you seen anyone unusual?" Daniel's heart pounded. He glanced back at Lyra, who was crouched behind the table, her glowing eyes just visible. He turned back to the men and forced his voice to stay calm. "No, only me here." The masked figure tilted his head. "Are you sure?" His tone was sharp, testing. Daniel crossed his arms. "Yes, I live alone. I haven't seen anyone." The men exchanged looks. Then one of them stepped forward, peering into the crack of the door. "We were told she was weak, small, gray-skinned. If she is here, hiding, and you protect her, it will not end well for you." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I said I haven't seen anyone. Now leave." He pushed the door shut with more force than needed. He stood there for a long time, listening to the sound of their boots crunching on the gravel as they walked away. When he finally turned, Lyra was pressed against the wall, shaking. "They found us," she whispered. Her voice was thin, almost broken. Daniel knelt beside her. "No, they only came asking questions. They don't know you're here." But she shook her head. "They will come again. They always do. They won't stop until they take me." Tears streamed down her cheeks, her whole body trembling. Daniel held her tightly. "Then they'll have to come through me first." That night, Daniel barely slept. He sat in the living room, a rifle across his knees. Every sound outside made his chest tighten. The wind in the trees, the hoot of an owl, even the creak of the house, each one felt like a warning. Lara stayed close to him, curled up on the couch, her head resting against his arm. He stroked her hair gently until she fell into a restless sleep. The next day, news came from town. A neighbor stopped Daniel on the road, whispering nervously. "Did you hear? The shelter burned down last night." Daniel's stomach dropped. "What?" The man nodded quickly, glancing around as if afraid to be overheard. "They say soldiers raided it, looking for a runaway. No one knows what happened to the children who were still inside. Some say they were taken. Some say worse." He lowered his voice. "Be careful, Daniel. They are searching every home." Daniel returned quickly to the house, his mind racing. When he entered, Lyra was standing at the window, her small hand pressed against the glass. She turned when she heard him, and he saw the terror already in her eyes. "They destroyed it, didn't they?" she asked in a trembling voice. He didn't answer right away, but his silence told her enough. She covered her face with her hands, sobbing softly. "They're coming. I told you they wouldn't stop. They'll come here, and when they do, you'll lose everything." Daniel stepped forward and placed his hands gently on her shoulders. "Listen to me. I don't care what they do. I don't care how many come. I won't let them take you, not while I'm alive." She lifted her head, tears shining in her glowing eyes. "Why? Why do you care? You could give me up and they would leave you alone." Her voice broke with despair. Daniel's voice was low but steady. "Because you're my daughter now, and no father gives up his child." For a long moment, she stared at him, as if she couldn't believe his words. Then she buried her face against his chest, clinging to him with desperate strength. He held her close, feeling her small heart beating wildly. That evening, Daniel prepared for what was coming. He locked every door, barred the windows, and packed a small bag with food and water. Lyra watched him silently, her eyes wide and filled with dread. "Are we leaving?" she asked. "Not yet," he said, "but soon. If they come, we'll be ready." The night was darker than usual. Clouds covered the moon, and the wind carried the smell of smoke from the burned shelter far away. Lyra couldn't sleep. She sat on the floor beside Daniel's chair, her head leaning against his leg. Suddenly, she whispered, "They're close." Daniel frowned. "How do you know?" She closed her eyes. "I can feel them, like a shadow crawling near." Her hands shook as she gripped his arm. "They'll be here soon." And then, as if her words had called them, the sound came. The heavy rumble of engines, the crunch of boots, the faint glow of lights moving through the trees outside the house. Daniel rose quickly, grabbing his rifle. Lyra's breath came fast and shallow. Through the window, he saw them. Dozens of figures, moving in the darkness, their masks shining faintly under the glow of their strange lamps. They were spreading out, surrounding the house. One of them lifted a device, and a voice boomed across the night air. "Human, we know she is inside. Surrender the girl, and we will spare you. Resist, and you will suffer her fate." Lyra's body shook violently. She whispered, "Please don't let them take me. Please, Papa." Daniel crouched beside her, his face firm, his voice strong. I won't. No matter what happens, I won't. The pounding on the door began, shaking the whole house. Daniel pulled Lyra behind him, his heart steady with one thought. They would have to tear him apart before he gave her up. Would you like me to now expand Part 6, The Escape, into 900 words in the same simple, suspenseful style? The pounding on the door grew louder. Dust fell from the ceiling as the masked soldiers tried to break in. Daniel's grip tightened on his rifle. His heart hammered in his chest, but his eyes stayed fixed on the door. Behind him, Lyra clung to his arm, trembling so hard he could feel her shaking through his sleeve. The window glass cracked as the soldiers tried another way in. Daniel knew the house would not hold much longer. He leaned down to Lyra. We have to go now. Her glowing eyes widened in fear, but she nodded. He grabbed the small bag he had packed earlier, slung it across his shoulder, and pulled her toward the back door. The back door opened into the forest. The night air was cold, heavy with mist, and the trees swayed like tall shadows. Daniel and Lyra ran, their footsteps muffled by the damp ground. Behind them, shouts rose. The soldiers had broken into the house and found it empty. Soon, beams of strange light swept across the trees, chasing them through the darkness. Lyra stumbled, her small legs struggling to keep up. Daniel lifted her into his arms and carried her, pushing forward through the thick branches. Her thin arms wrapped around his neck, and he felt her warm breath against his skin. I'm sorry, she whispered. They will catch us because of me. Daniel shook his head firmly. No, they won't, not while I'm alive. The forest grew denser, branches clawing at his clothes, roots twisting under his boots. He moved quickly, guided only by instinct, turning left then right, trying to lose their pursuers. But the lights behind them did not fade. They were gaining. At last, Daniel reached an old abandoned road. A broken bridge stretched across a shallow river. He stopped, breathing hard, and set Lyra down for a moment. She looked around, fear written across her face. We can't stop, she whispered. I know, Daniel replied, scanning the road. His eyes fell on a small cave hidden under the bridge. It was dark, damp, but it might buy them some time. He lifted her again and climbed down carefully. Inside, the cave smelled of wet earth. Daniel placed her in the corner and crouched near the entrance, watching the forest. The soldiers' lights grew brighter. He heard them shouting orders, their metallic voices echoing through the trees. They were close. Too close. He pressed a finger to his lips, signaling Lyra to stay quiet. She hugged her knees, her glowing veins faint under her skin. Minutes passed like hours. The light swept across the road above them, and boots pounded on the broken wood of the bridge. Daniel held his breath. If one of them looked down, they would be caught. Lyra squeezed her eyes shut, trembling. Daniel reached back and touched her hand gently, steadying her. She clutched his fingers, clinging to the comfort. Finally, the voices moved further away. The soldiers had gone deeper into the forest, still searching. Daniel exhaled slowly, his muscles aching from the tension. He looked at Lyra. We have to keep moving before they come back. They left the cave and followed the river, moving quietly, step by step. The water reflected the faint glow of the stars, guiding them. Hours passed, and Daniel's strength began to waver, but he did not stop. Lyra grew heavier in his arms, though she was light as air. He carried her until his legs burned, until his lungs ached, but still he moved forward. When dawn broke, the sky turned pale gray and the forest grew brighter. Daniel found an old hut, half collapsed, hidden under thick vines. He pushed the door open and carried Lyra inside. The roof leaked, but it was shelter. He laid her down gently on a pile of dry leaves. She looked up at him with tired eyes. You should leave me, she whispered weakly. If you leave me here, they won't hurt you. Daniel knelt beside her, his face stern but soft. Don't ever say that. I told you, you're my daughter now. I don't leave family behind. His voice shook with emotion. She stared at him for a long moment, then buried her face against his chest, her small body trembling with relief. They rested for a while, though Daniel did not sleep. He sat with his back against the wall, his rifle across his knees, listening to every sound outside. Birds sang in the trees, and the river whispered nearby, but every crack of a branch made him tighten his grip. He knew the soldiers would not give up. They would keep hunting, no matter how far he ran. Later that day, as the sun dipped low, Lyra tugged at his sleeve. Papa, she whispered, I can help. He looked at her, frowning. Help how? She lifted her small hand, and a pebble on the ground rose into the air, floating before dropping again. I can do more. I can hide us. I can confuse them. Her voice shook with both fear and determination. Daniel touched her shoulder gently. Only if you have to. Your gift is not a weapon. It's part of you. Don't let them make you believe it's the only reason you exist. She nodded slowly, her eyes shining with trust. For the first time, she seemed stronger. Not just a frightened child, but someone who wanted to fight for her place in the world. That night, they moved again, slipping through the forest under the cover of darkness. But this time, Lyra's presence felt different. She was no longer just a burden he carried. She was walking beside him, her small hand holding his, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. When the soldiers finally caught their trail again, surrounding them with lights and weapons, Daniel braced himself. He held her close, ready to fight until his last breath. But then, something unexpected happened. Lyra stepped forward, her small face set with determination. The air around her shimmered, and the ground trembled faintly. For the first time, Daniel saw not just fear in her, but power. The power that made others hunt her, the power that made her afraid of herself. But in that moment, she was not afraid. She was ready to use it, not to destroy, but to protect the only person who had ever chosen her. Would you like me to now expand Part 7, The Final Stand and New Beginning, into 900 words in the same simple, suspenseful style? The forest was alive with light. Strange beams cut through the trees, shining on Daniel and Lyra as soldiers closed in from every side. Their metallic masks reflected the glow, their boots crushing leaves and twigs as they moved closer. Daniel pulled Lyra behind him, his rifle raised, though he knew one man against so many was almost hopeless. His chest burned with fear, but he refused to let her see it. The voice came again, cold and sharp. Human, give us the girl. She is not yours. She belongs to us. Hand her over, and we will spare your life. Lyra's small hand clutched Daniel's sleeve tightly. She pressed herself against his back, trembling, whispering, "Don't let them take me." Her voice was broken with terror, but also with trust. Daniel lowered his head slightly and whispered back, "Never, not while I breathe." The soldiers raised their weapons. Strange blue sparks lit up their rifles, humming with deadly energy. Daniel braced himself, pulling Lyra closer. He knew he could not fight them all, but he would die before he surrendered her. His finger rested on the trigger, ready for the first shot. Then something changed. Lyra stepped forward from behind him. Her eyes glowed bright, her veins burning like lines of fire under her gray skin. The air around them began to ripple, as if the world itself was bending. Daniel reached for her, fear in his voice. "No, stay back." But she shook her head. "You protected me. Now I protect you." Her voice was stronger than he had ever heard it before. The ground trembled under their feet. Leaves flew into the air as if caught in a storm. The soldiers shouted in confusion, their lights flickering. Some raised their weapons higher, but before they could fire, the rifles were ripped from their hands and thrown into the trees. The soldiers staggered back, shouting, as unseen force pushed them away. Daniel stared in shock. Lyra stood in the center, her small body trembling but unbroken, her hands outstretched. The air around her shimmered with invisible power. She screamed, not in fear but in defiance, and a wave of force burst outward, knocking soldiers to the ground like dolls thrown by a giant hand. The forest went silent for a moment. Then groans filled the air as the soldiers tried to rise again. But their weapons lay scattered, and their strength seemed broken. Daniel ran to Lyra and caught her as her knees gave out. She collapsed into his arms, gasping for breath. Her glowing eyes flickered weakly. "Papa, did I do bad?" she whispered. He held her tightly, pressing his cheek to her damp hair. "No, you were brave. You saved us both." The surviving soldiers began crawling back, dragging their injured away. One of them shouted, "This is not over. She belongs to us. We will return." Their voices faded into the night as they retreated, leaving behind the broken branches and the smell of burned air. Daniel lifted Lyra carefully and carried her deeper into the forest. His legs shook with exhaustion, but his spirit burned stronger than ever. She had unleashed her power, but she had done it to protect him, to protect them both. She was no cursed child. She was extraordinary. At dawn, they reached the edge of the forest. A valley stretched before them, quiet and green, far from the reach of the soldiers. Daniel set Lyra down on a rock, brushing the dirt from her face. Her eyes opened slowly, soft and tired, but for the first time she smiled. It was faint, small, but real. "We're safe?" she asked. "For now," Daniel answered, stroking her hair. "But no matter where we go, I will keep you safe." Her small hand reached for his, gripping it tightly. "You didn't give me up," she whispered. Her voice trembled with emotion. "No one ever wanted me. No one ever chose me. But you did." Daniel's eyes filled with tears he did not let fall. "You are my daughter," he said firmly. "Not by blood, but by choice. And that means more than anything." The valley breeze brushed against them, carrying the scent of wildflowers. For the first time since he had brought her home, Lyra's face looked peaceful. She leaned against him, her eyes half closing in calm. The sun rose higher, painting the sky gold. Daniel looked at her fragile form and felt something shift inside him. She had come into his life broken and unwanted, but now she was his reason to fight, his reason to live. He thought back to the whispers at the shelter, the laughter, the warnings. No one wants her. She is broken. But they had been wrong. She was not broken. She was strong, and together they would prove it to the whole galaxy. As the morning light touched her skin, her glowing veins dimmed, fading back into silence. She was only a child again, leaning against her father's shoulder. Daniel kissed her forehead and whispered, "You will never be alone again." And for the first time since she had entered his life, Lyra's voice was steady when she answered, "I know, Papa." "Do you want me to now create a full combined narration script of all 7 parts into one continuous story for your YouTube video, in simple English with suspense hooks at each part's ending?"